And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome David Saint-Jacques for this morning's plenary called Dare to Explore. Prior to joining the Canadian Space Agency, David Saint-Jacques practiced family medicine in Puvirnituq, a northern Canadian community overlooking the Hudson Bay. Before that, he worked internationally as an astrophysicist and an engineer. In December 2018, he flew to the International Space Station as co-pilot of the Soyuz MS-11 spacecraft. During his 204-day mission as crew medical officer and firefight engineer, he conducted a variety of scientific experiments, technology demonstration, and outreach events. David Saint-Jacques became the fourth Canadian astronaut to perform a spacewalk and the first to use Canadarm2 to capture a visiting spacecraft. Since his return from space, David Saint-Jacques has been supporting current and future CSA human spaceflights project, including Canada's contribution to deep space exploration. And he, unfortunately, assisting a mission he is in the United States, so he's going to be joining us today virtually, but we're really honored to have him come and share his experience and insights with us. So please join me in welcoming Canadian Space Agency astronaut David Saint-Jacques.
On December 3rd, 2018, David Saint-Jacques had a dream come true. He flew to the International Space Station for a 6.5-month mission in space. When astronauts are quarantined before going to space, what was once a dream becomes to feel more and more real. The launch on December 3rd was a success. David's journey to the space station lasted 6 hours. Once on board, a very busy schedule awaited the astronauts.
Welcome on board the space station.
From conducting science experiments to maintaining the space station, working out every day, and communicating with young Canadians all over the country, performing a wide variety of tasks to ensure the success of the mission.
It is a very humbling privilege to be here. Very, very few people have had that chance to see these views.
David had the chance to take part in a world first, the test flight of the Crew Dragon spacecraft.
Farewell, Dragon. Farewell, Ripley.
On March 14, 3 new crewmates arrived on the station. On April 8, David Saint-Jacques conducted his first spacewalk.
Good morning, DC. Ready.
He was accompanied by NASA astronaut Anne McLean. For 6.5 hours, they carried out a number of tasks, including connecting cables to provide an alternate power supply for Canadarm2. David became the 4th Canadian Space Agency astronaut to perform a spacewalk.
We take time to look around us. We take time to try to let it all sink in. To be honest, I'm sure it will take weeks, months, or maybe even years for the experience to really sink in.
He controlled Canadarm2 to capture SpaceX's Dragon cargo ship.
Welcome on board, Dragon.
We were backing away and we could see the space station and the solar panels gradually receding. I noticed movement. We still had the impression that we weren't moving, that we were floating. It reminded me a bit perhaps of the impact one feels in a car crash. It was a very abrupt stop. The wave is very strong, this enormous wave that brought me here. It was quite a trip. I'm completely blown away.
It's very touching and it's very humbling, and it makes you want to go back to Earth and help make it better.
Bonjour, tout le monde. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Thanks. I really wished I could be there with you. I'm a physician. There's this huge conference in my hometown. I was so enthusiastic about this invitation, and then things happened, and here I'm calling you from the Johnson Space Center in Houston. where I've had to come to support missions, but try to do a good job and still kind of welcome you into the fold of human spaceflight, make you kind of understand maybe what it feels like from the inside, and see the rapport it has with emergency medicine. That was one of the things that struck me as a former single. I was a lonely doctor in a little village doing everything, including emergencies, obviously, and being the crew medical officer on a spacecraft felt very similar in a way. So try to share that and talk about the future, and then keep time for questions. I think that's where the money is. So I have a few slides to share if technology is gonna help us here. Do you see those slides? I think you see them. All right. So you've seen the video that kind of summarizes what I did, but go into a few more details. So yeah, my path to becoming an astronaut says I was a doctor in an Inuit village when I was selected, when I heard they were recruiting astronauts. And for me, I thought I'd found the perfect job, mixture of a scientist and explorer in a way. It's beautiful places we have up north in Canada. But then it's like I heard the voice of the little boy in me saying, oh, you gotta try, you gotta try. And I didn't realize that medicine had really prepared me well in a way. The resourcefulness, the teamwork between the physicians and the super nurses, the bush pilots that fly our ambulances, the Inuit first responders. That's it. We are medical care, and there's nobody to turf the patient to. So you kind of learn the MacGyver spirit and the teamwork that was going to serve me well. But the truth is, I didn't really start on my way to being an astronaut as a physician. This is how I started. Like we all start in life. This is the beginning of everybody's path and dreams as a dreamy little boy. And nothing made me dream more than images like that. I remember, I think, not the first time I saw these images, but the first time I kind of understood what I was looking at. Maybe it was 5 or 6. Like, okay, I'm there. Where's the photographer? Well, he's not on Earth. How is that possible? What is my perspective exploded, and I determined that I would try to understand the world around me. That became the purpose of my life, to broaden my perspective ever and ever. And I realized also that it must be difficult to get there. You probably need to think about stuff, machines, procedures. You need a technical mind. Put your technical mind at the service of your heart, of your dreams. And I kept dreaming of adventures with my little brother on our ships. And we can talk about the process and the selection and all that jazz, but eventually one thing led to another, and I did become an astronaut, and I did join a space crew, and here I am with my space brother and space sister, Anne and Oleg, and before the pandemic, I got to ride the Soyuz rocket from the steppes of Kazakhstan to our International Space Station. And I want to say a few things about the space station. Space station, sorry about that. Space station obviously is a marvel of technology, the most complicated machine humans have ever built. And during my mission, I had the chance to do all the cool things that astronauts can do. Got to use Canadarm to capture a space cargo vehicle and get our resupplies. On a spacesuit, go outside and repair my house. Do a lot of maintenance because the space station is it's a giant, if you want, life support system. It's a bit like a giant ventilator. Most of the equipment there is really there to keep the crew alive. So we spend about half our time maintaining stuff or repairing stuff that's broken. And with the other half that we have, we're lab techs. We do mostly biological experiments or healthcare related experiments or health technology related experiments. And we are the guinea pig for a lot of research, because going to space is very cool, but it's just very, very bad for you. Very, very bad. Bad for radiation, blood, for every system in your body. You don't need, this is probably too dumb for this August medical audience, but you can imagine basically that after millions of years, billions of years of evolution on Earth, in the presence of gravity, all our systems are kind of tuned around it. You remove gravity, it is shocking how everything goes sideways. And there isn't a system that isn't affected. And it always sort of resembles a real disease, osteoporosis. We get osteoporosis, we get vestibular disease, we get all sorts of cardiovascular ailments, a lot of neurological problems, a lot of immunological problems. But these things develop really quickly in otherwise very healthy individuals. So we're like the perfect guinea pigs for medical research. So that's why, especially Canada, that's most of what we do in space is medically related research to help astronauts live better in the environment of space. And also there's a question of health technologies, because you need to stay fit in space and you're far from home. You want to come back home and be healthy. We're like an extreme case of home care. And so there's a lot of technology that's developed to help the astronauts take care of themselves, more than just at the biological level, also med tech. So that occupies the other half of your time when you're in space. That's, I think, a no-brainer. International Space Station, great laboratory with a lot of impacts on Earth. But it's also, there's other aspects why I think it's dear to me. It's the International Space Station. And to this audience, you came around the world because you have a goal in common, emergency care. It's a bit of the same. The International Space Station is a daily demonstration that, if you look at the flags there, you don't have to go back in time to find serious conflicts and actual wars between some of these countries. But it seems like in space, kind of rise above, and it's a bit as if space was the last bridge that humanity wants to keep open at all costs. And that professionally is a great pride that even in those dire times, we keep collaborating with Russia, for example. We got out of the Cold War in part with international space collaboration. It is an important part of this endeavor. And I think it really speaks to the current generation that even if we're capable of the worst, humans, we're also capable of the best. And we shouldn't stop doing the best because sometimes we do the worst. And there's another aspect that's even, I think, dearer to me beyond the research, the international aspect, the bridge in the sky. It's the perspective. If you look at this station, a marvel of human creativity, ingenuity, teamwork on an international level over generations. It's incredible. And it keeps alive in the deadly vacuum of space 6 or 7 crew members. It's a miracle. Well, look at what's behind. Earth. That perspective on our home planet, we owe it to the space program. Earth keeps, of course, billions of us alive in the deadly vacuum of space. When people ask me, do you want to go back to space? I say, where do you think we are? We're in space. This is our spacecraft, Mother Earth. But that perspective is a bit abstract. When you go to space, you come back with that perspective completely ingrained. It's a gut feeling for me now. Look at the thin blue line. That's like our helmet protecting us from the deadly vacuum of space. On that, this is the mighty St. Lawrence River. Montreal is kind of over there to the left of the picture. On that scale, oceans are merely a coat of varnish. It's very endearing up there how exposed we are. And the vantage view you have from this artificial little bubble of comfort away from where you developed, it really makes you feel like you're mostly an earthling, not a Montrealer, not a Quebecer for me, not a Canadian, not a North American, but just an earthling, kind of belong to that planet. And it is, you feel far from the ones you love. It kind of simplifies priorities. And makes you realize that, yes, you must have ambition and do the right thing, but really never forget where you come from. And it's nowhere truer than during a spacewalk when you're alone in your little bubble and all you hear is the voice of your other crew member, and in my case, it was outside, and Capcom owner in Houston, Jeanette. And these two women were the only two people that I could interact with in this little bubble completely created by human ingenuity over decades by tens of thousands of smart people with satellite networks required but to communicate. And yet here you are, it's just you being comfortable working, repairing your home. It is incredible. To me, this is the epitome of human ingenuity. It's like the reach of the human mind has no limit when we decide to work together. The perspective is gobsmacking. You look at the Earth, it's amazing, of course. It's amazingly beautiful, unbelievable. Everything else around is dead, The moon is a rock, the sun is a ball of fire, and the Earth is like, whoa, what is this? But when you look away, this is where it's really shocking. We're in the middle of nowhere, so completely exposed and so completely on our own. It's very endearing. It's very clear to you that you're nothing but an earthling. You belong to this planet, and you gotta do whatever you can to help make life on Earth better. Also brought me very close to my kids. All of you are hardworking professionals. My wife is also a physician. I know what it can be like for families trying to grow kids at the same time. I was on this basically very long business trip after years of training. Yet these were some of the best memories of my time up there. One day we had 1 hour of dedicated satellite downlink time, and we could do some kind of a goofy FaceTime session. And I found dehydrated waffles on board and maple syrup in like a toothpaste tube. And my kids would also have maple syrup waffles, and we kind of shared a meal every week. And to me, that brought huge meaning to the experience. This is the other view of it, and I know a lot of family people among you. You know what I mean when I say it was hard to leave them behind. Eventually, got to come back home, become a shooting star as you burn through the atmosphere, crash land in Kazakhstan, and these burly search and rescue guys come and wrench you out of there. You can barely walk. You need to be walked around, not because you're weak after spaceflight. The last day in space was probably the fittest I've ever been, but the return to gravity is crushing. That's very frustrating. You would think it's like riding a bicycle. I grew up on Earth. Why is it difficult to come back to Earth? It is very difficult. You are always lipothymic. I had kind of lost the orthostatic reflex. So blood kept falling to my feet as soon as I stood up. Because that orthostatic reflex is of no use in zero-G, obviously. It just gives you a big puffy head, so it kind of tones down. I had no more sense of balance because with the absence of gravity, my inner ear also got to tone down by my brain. And so I was just useless, unable to walk. Need my kids to hold my hand when I finally made it back to Houston. And after a couple of weeks of rehab, finally got it strong enough and balanced enough to, enjoy the wind in my face and the sun on my skin and kind of run outside. And after 2 weeks, this was my benchmark. I was brave enough to walk with my daughter on my shoulders, and I knew that I had really come back, and I was ready to be an earthling again. So that's my story. But I want to talk a bit about the future. Everything you've seen is all taken from the space station. It really is only 400 kilometers away from Earth. Now, you've heard, if you follow the news a little bit, we're going back to the moon. We've been to the moon. Some of you in the audience might have been alive during the Apollo landings. I was not. My mother was pregnant of me during Apollo 11. The moon we're going back to internationally, and this time we're going back to stay. This is an artist's rendition, but we really have this ambition of eventually settling on the moon, including growing our own food, and including, and this is for you guys, some sort of medical care. Currently, the model on space station is that we pick super healthy people, we ask them to be really careful, and we have some hope of medevac if something's really bad. And then we pack a basic medical kit. some antibiotics and things to cure to deal with cuts and nicks and fractures and electrocution. Of course, we have basic emergency kit, but as we venture further out, we'll need to make the crews completely independent for their healthcare. And that is something that we will all be happy to have on Earth. A little plug here for the Canadian Space Program. The next mission to the moon, Artemis 2, has a Canadian on board. Great, great moment for our country. The first non-American to travel to the moon will be a Canadian, my good friend Jeremy Hansen here on the right. So stay tuned, sometimes about a year. And I need to say a few things about the really, really crazy long-term dream of Mars. The moon is basically 1,000 times away from Earth, 1,000 times further away than the space station. You see it in the sky. You kind of, it's kind of the size of the US, so you can imagine how far it is, knowing how big it is. Mars is 1,000 times further away than the moon. It's no kidding, a different level and of risk and of requirement for autonomy, including medical autonomy. This is really far-fetched dream one day to actually settle on Mars, but just getting there and bringing crews back, the first step, is going to require another level of medical autonomy, among other things, autonomy for resources, autonomy for energy production and management. But medical autonomy is becoming perhaps the most critical factor for spaceflight missions. You have all these systems that have to work, but the further away you are, for the longer you are away, then the fragile human being becomes more and more the most fragile part of the mission. So we have to equip them for sustainability. And these numbers don't mean anything for anybody, but I just want to show you an image just to burn it in your mind how far away Mars is. This is a picture of the night sky taken from Mars by one of those NASA rovers there. And you can see the Earth in the sky. Do you see it? Here's the Earth. When you're on Mars, the Earth looks like what Mars looks like from Earth. A little dot. You're not sure which one it is. That's how far we are. We want to be. And medical autonomy is going to be a big part of the success of those missions. I want to finish with just a little video, just to relax all these emotions. Beautiful images of the Earth taken from space station at night. And you'll see the white, yellow lights of cities, typically, the white flashes of lightning, and the beautiful green, eerie lights of northern lights as they float over the atmosphere. You can launch the video, please.
thank you very much. Merci, David, for these pearls of wisdom that I think are applicable everywhere, including in the pit, in the emergency room. We have time for questions, so I'll invite people to come. There are microphones in the aisle, so please. And I think Dr. Saint-Jacques says that kids are never out of questions, so we have to rise to and compete with kids who attend his conferences.
Otherwise, I'm going to ask questions.
Someone's going there.
Is there a microphone? Hello, thank you very much. That was brilliant and inspiring. In terms of medical autonomy, as we get farther and farther away from Earth, I wonder where you think the balance between remote technologies or versus AI. So are you looking at having people trained on-scene remote support from Earth, or how does AI fit into that equation?
The problem with remote support is the not infinite speed of light. Already on the moon, you got at a minimum a few seconds delay in communications. If you're halfway to Mars, it's several minutes of delay in any communication. So, like telehealth, as we know it, that is not applicable to deep space missions. It's going to be like text messaging or emails or sending a video ahead of time. So that's why I'm saying we are closer to a model of home care than to a model of remote care. The other aspect, and you guys will all understand this, is that, yeah, for sure, there will be probably a physician on board these missions, but that'll be a very rusty physician who will spend months with super healthy people with mostly nothing happening. So we will need to amp our game in terms of real-time training, real-time simulations, so that rusty physician stands a chance of doing the right thing. For the first moments, as you all know, as emergency physicians, that's what these crew medical officers will be like. They're going to have to respond to the first few minutes, and then you can ask questions, and the answer will come in 10 minutes maybe. But the first few minutes, you will forever be on your own there. So that part, AI, obviously, instead of a pocketbook, and good quality real-time training and simulation to keep that rusty physician as shiny as possible, not too rusty. These are a central part of medical autonomy. You even want to reach a stage where, imagine, for example, it'd be great if we had an ultrasound machine that is so smart that anybody can image their own liver, because it kind of knows where it turns inside the probe, it knows where to look for. So even regular crew members could participate in their own self-care. Another conundrum we have is, right now, the real medical authority is in Houston or around the world, or wherever the consultant is. There's a crew medical officer, he's like a first responder on board, but because we have instant communication, very quickly we defer to the ground for advice and guidance. For deep space missions, the medical authority is going to have to be on board. We're going to have to put it on board. So it's not a novel thing, military on deployment and medical expeditions on Everest, they also have that kind of notion, but I think we'll take it to another level, and everything we learn with the excuse of space exploration, I think we're all going to benefit from. Medical autonomy, enabling first-line responders. I mean, these are all things that we all desire.
If you have questions, just please go up to the microphones in the aisle. I have a question. Someone asked, you didn't briefly mention when did you decide, and when did you think, oh, I got a chance? And maybe I've heard you speak before to the selection process and the training process. So if you can speak to that a little bit.
So as a boy, I was fascinated by the fact that we were in space and all that. There's just incomprehensible mystery. So I decided I want to understand that. So that led me to astrophysics. And life led me to medicine later as a second career. But I never really thought it was a real possibility to be an astronaut. I have a kid who wants to be a samurai. Man, it's a great dream to have, you know. It's a good guide of moral choices. Well, not really a samurai, you can't. But for me, it was like that. To be an astronaut was an aspiration. I want to be someone like that. But I never thought it was possible. I was working as a physician when I heard there was a recruitment going on, and I really thought, I could not live with myself if I didn't apply, if I didn't try. And it was a whole year-long process, basically. It started with a very benign 2-pager online, and then and we're several thousand people applying, and you have no idea. You have no idea if you're even remotely the kind of person they're looking for. Who knows an astronaut, you know? So, and then it got more involved, more CVs, more questions, medical questionnaire, and a lot of medical testing, until eventually they start to test you for, so these are all screenings, until they test you for abilities, hand-eye coordination. If you're not a pilot, could you become a pilot? If you're not a robotic operator, could you become an operator? Can you learn on your own? Are you autonomous? Can you speak in public? Because that's a big part of our job. So there's a lot of testing that goes on, a lot of psychological screening, also to see if you're the right, if you're the expedition crew teammate sort of person. And then some of the toughest tests were so-called stress tests, not like on a bicycle with electrodes, but where they, for us, they imagine the situation, they bring us to, it was a whole day of firefighting simulations and really uncomfortable environments. And then threw us in the water for some more, more repair and kind of simulating a sinking ship. Anyway, you were dead. You were hypoglycemic, hypothermic, you had enough, you're like exhausted of this 12-hour day. And then the test begins. And they give us really tricky teamwork questions and judgment problems when you're on your knees. Because they want to see, it's easy to be a good guy in an interview room, but who are you when you've had enough? What's left when the tank is empty? I'm glad they did that, because I know every astronaut in the astronaut office I could go to space with, and if it really hits the fan, I know they'll still keep an eye out for me. So that sort of expeditionary skill screening is done in practice. So anyway, a whole year of a testing, and every step they cut more people, thousands and thousands, and then hundreds, and then dozens, and eventually, I remember boarding a plane to Toronto once, looking at the email distro. It was for more medical testing. Oh, there's only 50 people left. Maybe. I think that's when I started to think, this is maybe not a pie. This is maybe not a crazy thing. Maybe. And honestly, I think what they really look for, every test, there was someone clearly better than me at that test. But they test you on everything. So kind of looking for the few people who did not fail any test, kind of a jack of all trade of whatever profession you're in. Wow. And I've now since participated in selections, and they like physicians. That's why they like physicians, because we are perceived as academics, obviously, but with a practical sense at the same time. And we're comfortable in our head, in our books, but we can also work with others in a busy, crazy decision-making environment. You see, there's a lot of, we're kind of pre-selected already. So that's why physicians were the first people after fighter pilots to be considered for spaceflight.
Wow, thanks for this. There's another question in the back.
Salut David, merci pour tout ce que tu fais. Any surprises for you, whether on your personal physical level or in your research, as far as the effects of spaceflight on human health? Anything that surprised or shocked you?
So I was not surprised how hard it was to adapt to microgravity, because I thought evolution hasn't prepared me for this. So for sure I'll be sick, and for sure I'll be disoriented. And you adapt. That is surprising. You wake up after maybe a month in 0G, and you go sip a coffee at the cupola, and you go, my God, I'm so comfortable. It's as if I was born here. This is amazing. that the human body can adapt to this. But then it was so much more difficult to readapt to Earth. That was so frustrating. It was terrible. It crushed me. I was going, well, how long is it going to take before I can live here in 1G? So that was, but these are, I mean, they pass. And some people adapt better than others. Maybe I was particularly slow. I don't know. You can readapt. The long-term effects, obviously, kind of playing the lottery with cancer, because you're much more exposed to radiation when you're not protected by the atmosphere and the Earth's magnetic field. I'm not sure that my fine balance has come back, but at the same time, you age. So I wear glasses now. There are effects because we assume increased intracranial pressure through fluid shift, and that transmits to the eyeball. Everybody gets their eyeball a little bit squished from pressure, but then they bounce back, you're okay. But balance, wearing glasses. My wife tells me, dude, you can't blame everything on spaceflight. You're also 55, so there's a natural decay there. Surprising things, that was it. Surprisingly stressful. There's a lot of psychological aspects also to this medical envelope, obviously. There is a funny effect that most crew members feel that is called this overview effect. Of this, you see the Earth, you float in space, your mind can't really believe it. As a child, we constantly see new things for the first time. That's why kids are so amazing. That's why they have this spirit of discovery. But the older you get, the more rare it is that you see a new thing, right? Remember a few years ago, people from Montreal, we saw an eclipse. That was the first time I saw an eclipse. I was like, ooh, something like a kid again, because this is a new thing. Seeing the Earth from space is like seeing an eclipse. It's a rare time that I see something new for the first time. And it took a while for my mind to accept it. And yeah, that sense of belonging to the planet is really strong, really, really, really strong. And that sense of being cut from what really matters in your life, family and people you love, that was very strong. And so during the pandemic, we remember during the first lockdown, I had this strange moment. I thought, my God, I've lived through this before. It seems like I've been in lockdown before with a few people in my home, wondering what is the real world outside like. And so none of it is superhuman or nothing that you cannot prepare with. That's the amazing nature of human capability to adapt. But to go back to your question, it was mostly how frustratingly difficult it is to readapt to 1G. Comparatively easier to adapt to 0G.
Merci.
Thank you. We have another question on the left.
Thank you so much for what you do. It's just amazing and a very inspiring story. Maybe 3 short questions and in succession. Have you found or are you finding what you want as a child? I love the way you started the presentation. What's your top find? Are things that disillusion you as you go for this journey? And finally, what do you tell your kids? What have you learned from what you have that you want to share with your children? Thanks.
So I'll try to remember the question. I might ask you them again. So the first one, have I found what I was looking for? Not yet, because my childhood dream really is to understand everything. Good luck with that. But I have certainly expanded my perspective in a way that is it kind of lives with me. I don't feel like I came back from space. I mean, I know when I see the sunset, I know it's not this thing going away. I'm on a ball that's spinning backwards. That's why I'm losing sight of this light in the sky, this geometry of where we are. So that perspective is ingrained. But you probably meant to ask more philosophical aspect. So there's been 2 sides to this coin. First, seeing the Earth alone in the middle of nowhere is very endearing, it's very beautiful, the only place alive. And it's very sobering because you go, wow, we really cannot afford to screw this one up. I mean, you can blah, blah, daydream of terrifying Mars and moving and changing, but simpler to not wreck the Earth. So very endearing, very sobering, how exposed we are and very limited resources. And there's no tube with new air or new water. That's what you got. It's all recycled forever. So that's sobering, but there's a flip side. It was also a great experience of the power of human collaboration. How this is not blah, blah. Every day we demonstrate practically in the space program that humans can work together. When we decide to work together, when we find ways to anchor our needs together, find common goals, we can. There's no question for me that it's impossible. No, we can work together as a species. And when we do, wow, it's incredible what we can accomplish. So as a father, as a citizen, as a human, I came back, optimistic, actually. Despite the very sobering realization of how exposed we are and the magnitude of the challenges, I came back optimistic. Yeah, no doubt we can. No doubt we can. No doubt we will. You got to keep investing in the youth, investing in those young minds. They hold the solutions to the problems. So that was your first question. What was the second one?
I think there are other people asking, but you've answered very, very well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We have been granted a few more minutes, so you're available to stay with us, Dr. Saint-Jacques. Yes. So we have one more in the middle there.
Thank you, David, for this inspiring talk. I want to hear more about your experience in northern Quebec as a physician, emergency physician especially, and how does working in a setting like this prepare you for life as a future astronaut in ways that practicing as a doctor in a more urban setting or resource-rich setting does not give you? What special experience do you get from there? Do you have any examples on that?
Well, I don't know that, in retrospect, I don't know that maybe I could have gathered the same experience. What I gathered there, it could have been, I could have gathered similar experiences in urban settings. The one thing that's clear different is that the patient is yours. There's nobody, you can't turf the patient to anybody. It's all, the patient is yours, whatever it is. And it can be anything, absolutely. And the whole of medicine can walk through your door, like any emergency physician knows. But, the option of evacuation, it's always a bit of a gamble with whether the ambulance plane is available. So you're often, even if it's a critically ill patient that you cannot ultimately take care of or that would need surgical services, sometimes they're with you for a week anyway. With very skinny resources, you can't afford to dedicate a nurse to a patient full time. There's a whole village to take care of. So resource management and risk mitigation and very intense teamwork, I find, relying on each other. It's kind of a brother and sisterhood clinical practice, the more remote you are, I find. So that was a good preparation. If you want that sense that, it's my responsibility at the end of the day. The whole story is my responsibility. So I think that learning to desensitize in a way to that stress and say, well, I'm going to do the best I can do at the same time. That's the other part of it. I may not be the best at this particular procedure, but I'm the best who's here now. I'm the best one, so let's focus and do the best job I can. That's also part of emergency physician. The reality of emergency physicians, we're not in a giant center, I suppose. Yeah, but I think one thing that I've learned is that I've then, since coming back, I've worked in, wards and giant hospitals. You can be alone as well as a physician there. It's just because you have no time or no resources to check with us. So you can also be on your own in your head. It really is a matter of circumstances. And I think at the end of the day, any physician has this strong sense of responsibility to do the best thing now for the patient that's in front of me. And that's really the preparation for spaceflight, taking responsibility for the reality, using all this abstract knowledge that you have gathered in your head, and now it's coming to fruition in a decision. And that's where the overlap really is.
Thanks. We have one question there.
Hi, I just want to say that you're such an inspiration to a lot of us students, and I remember having your picture on our classroom wall in science class, and I knew that, oh, maybe I want to be a physician later too, because he's really cool, so that's an option for me as well. It's just insane to have you here speaking to us today, and I wonder if
Congratulations for making it to med school.
Thank you so much. And I wonder if you have any advice for students who are just trying to find their way and how you decided to make it where you are now.
So I'll share with you a piece of advice that I got as a student. That at the end of the day, a lot of people will give you advice on what to do, what you should do, what you could do. And they're older and more senior, and maybe you want to believe them, you want to follow them. But at the end of the day, the path is in your heart. And it's a very small voice sometimes. But you got to pay attention to it. And then you got to put all your brain at the service of that dream to make it happen, of course. Just having a dream is not enough. But if you don't even try to listen to your dream, then someone else is going to decide, and you're going to lead someone else's dream. And that's just too bad. So that is one piece of advice I would say. Don't be shy of having a dream. And the more crazy it is, the better. The second part is, a lot of people have a dream, but because they decide it's impossible or too big or too crazy, then they don't try. Because maybe they're afraid that if they fail reaching it, they won't be able to live with that sense of failure. It's not a failure. The failure is to not try. The success is to give your best in trying. And I see dreams like, it's like the North Star. You use it as a direction. Nobody will ever make it to the North Star, right? But you can use it as a direction. This is my dream. That means, what can I do today? One step in that direction. And in the process of trying to become that dream, then you change. You become someone, and life takes you left and right. Maybe you'll change direction, but at least you're moving in a direction that you decide yourself. But don't obsess with the objective of reaching the goal. Obsess with the need to decide for yourself to the little steps you're going to make today, that they align with your values, that they feel right. And if every move you make every day of your life kind of feels right, then, well, the end result has to be right.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to have to stop at this time. Thanks for the great questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Saint-Jacques, for sharing your experience and knowledge with us today.
I want to thank you all as emergency physicians. I'm an old aging guy. I have children. I have parents. I mean, we're more and more often in the emergency room ourselves. And you are absolute critical part of modern society. Medicine is one of the most beautiful constructions of the human mind as we try to be more than what we are born with. And medicine plays a big part in enabling, it's kind of a great enabler for everybody. So thank you on behalf of all those I love for your work.
Thank you so much.